Hello and welcome to Crime Bytes, the show where we talk about some truly bizarre and disturbing crime cases. My name is Liz and today is True Crime Tuesday. So, how many of you are afraid of heights? I am, like, bad. So the story I'm going to tell you today is already giving me the crawls just thinking about it. Some people get into some wild situations while climbing or adventuring. And what about those people who end up dying because they're trying to get that perfect selfie on top of whatever building or landmark? Insanity. So today we're going to look at a young life cut short, and we're going to travel back to 1967, before the selfie stick was even a thought in anyone's head. And we're going to start our story off in Kentucky. Bobby Jo Roberts gives birth to a baby girl, whom she will name Deana. Bobby Jo would end up divorcing Deana's father when she was only 3, and Deana would end up falling in love really young herself. She would marry Jay Wild, a handsome Navy soldier, when she was only 17. Deana and Jay moved from Kentucky to San Diego, where Jay was posted. Unfortunately for these young lovers, Jay's long trips out at sea were too much for the couple to handle, and they decided to separate. When that happened, Deana needed a place to go, but as luck would have it, she found a couple in their 50s who were renting out a room, and get this, they were also from Kentucky, just like her. Virginia and Billie Jo, or BJ McGinnis, were renting out a room, and it seemed like the perfect fit. Lucky for Deana, she and Virginia seemed to get along great, and they ended up becoming fast friends. Things were slightly strained, though, between Deana and her mother at this point, and Bobby Jo would place some of the blame for this on Virginia. She had the feeling that she was coming in between the relationship between her and her daughter. That's never easy. This feeling was only heightened when Deana cut a trip home short and headed back to California after her mother had sent her a plane ticket for her to come visit. When she did return to California, the McGinnises decided to take her on a sightseeing road trip. They picked the Big Sur coast. Big Sur is described as the longest and most scenic stretch of undeveloped coastline in the contiguous United States, and is known for its beauty and its rugged scenery. About 60% of the land is still undeveloped, so it's full of beaches, redwoods, and hiking areas with some pretty impressive cliffs. The views are simply unparalleled, and the section of Highway 1 that loops through the area is considered one of the most beautiful and scenic drives in the country, if not the world. Sounds good to me. So on April 2nd, 1987, the trio would head to the Seal Beach to take in some of these breathtaking views that Deana had heard so much about. On the way, they made a pit stop at a cute little restaurant for lunch. Then they would finish their ascent to the cliff tops, where they could view the ocean and even catch some seal activity if they were lucky. A little while later, BJ and Virginia would burst into a nearby store yelling for help because their friend had fallen off the overlook. When paramedics came, they would find Deana dead at the bottom of the cliff. Virginia would tell them that she and BJ were headed back to their car and that she must have decided to take one glance at the ocean before she left, and when they looked around to call for her, she was just gone. And because of how steep these cliffs were, people falling to their deaths wasn't completely uncommon. So Deana's death was determined to be just another tragic accident on those cliffs. So back in Kentucky, Deana's devastated mother, Bobby Jo, was trying to make sense of her daughter's untimely death. When the insurance company denied her initial request, she hired a lawyer to help out, only to discover that another claim was taken out on her daughter's life. Not only that, it was taken out only a day before she had died. And the name on that claim was Virginia McGinnis. hang on. Yeah, Virginia had gone into the insurance company literally the day before Deana died, and then she tried to cash in the $35,000 policy the day after she died. Seriously. And apparently, because it was only $35,000, which was on the lower end price-wise for these policies, it would have just slid on through had it not been for Deana's mother. So Virginia had a son who was incarcerated, and she listed him as Deana's fiancé on the paperwork to make it legitimate. Bobby Joe's lawyer, Steve Keeney, reviewed the coroner's reports and had a forensic pathologist review the photos of the accident. Some of the injuries that were present were suspicious. Specifically, her hands were bruised in a manner that suggested that she may have been trying to hang on to the edge of the cliff, but something was smashed on her hands to make her let go. Her official cause of death, however, was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Feeling like he was onto something, Keeney started looking into the McGinnis's background, and boy did he find some things. Before she had even turned 30, Virginia had collected at least 5 insurance claims from fires that occurred in places where she had resided. She had also claimed to be a nurse, which was false. Not only that, but the people she cared for, including an ex-husband and her mother, had died in her care. And guess what? She was able to collect insurance money from their deaths. So her mother died in 1986 under what was determined to be a heart attack, but with suspicious circumstances. In 1984, her husband died from cancer, but also mysterious circumstances were noted. Apparently, he had almost OD'd on painkillers at least once, but had survived. Then, on the night that he did pass away, Virginia sent her children who were still at the house for a night out, and when they returned, he was dead. Then, if you look 10 years prior to that, in 1974, Virginia collected on her first life insurance policy, and it was for the death of her 3-year-old daughter, Cynthia. Cynthia died by hanging, and the details of how this may have happened are unknown, as Virginia was the one who found her, but she was found hanging from a wire in a barn, apparently from an 8-foot rafter, and Virginia claimed that somehow it was an accident, and she got the insurance money for it. Although not enough to prove anything yet, Keeney's report was compelling enough for the investigation to be reopened in California, and luckily the person who performed Deana's autopsy did save a small amount of her blood, and they were able to test it. When they did, they found traces of Elevol in her blood. Elevol is an antidepressant. Specifically, it's an antidepressant that is known to cause drowsiness and disorientation. Deana didn't have a prescription for Elevol, but BJ did. Investigators believe that Victoria and BJ probably slipped some of the Elevol into Deana's soft drink during lunch so that she would be easier to push off the cliff. Final but key piece of circumstantial evidence that ended up tying everything together were the final photos that the trio had taken at the cliffs together. In this picture, you can see Deana smiling and looking like a 70s model on the rock here. Then you see her and BJ, and she doesn't have the same expression. She's almost leaning into him like she's going to pass out. Then this is believed to be the last picture of Deana alive, and it is possibly right before BJ pushed her off the ledge. She probably tried to save herself and fight for her life, but in the end, she ended up falling to her death. During the trial, they actually moved the trial itself to the scene of the crime so that the jurors could get a feel for where she died, hopefully providing them with a little more insight as they deliberated. That's kind of cool. I mean, the circumstances, not so much, but, you know. Anyway, Virginia ended up being convicted for the murder of Deana Wilde. She was sentenced to life in prison and would end up dying there in 2011. BJ would die from complications from pneumonia while awaiting his trial. So, although tragic, at least Deana's death, along with her mother's determination to find out what happened to her, ended up putting an end to the killing and arson spree that Virginia had been on. Nothing else. And that's going to do it. But as always, let's try to end today on a more positive note. I know most of you have heard of babysitters or dog sitters. What about seal sitters? Seal Sitters is an organization in Washington that has volunteers dedicated to protecting seals. Seal pups sometimes will need to rest on the shores as well as warm up in the sun. Some people seeing this may think that the pup needs assistance, but in attempting to help the animal, they can actually cause undue stress or worse, possible abandonment from the animal's nearby mother. So, in come the seal sitters. Seal sitters sit by the seals, so to speak. They use yellow tape to kind of section the seal off so that people will know that the seal is okay or is going to be taken care of. Another cool thing about this group is that they encourage children to volunteer as well, so everybody can help. To learn more about this awesome organization or to donate to their efforts, visit sealsitters.org. I hope you all have a great start to your March. Get some sunshine, take in those sweet spring views, but be careful who you do it with. Anyways, till I see you guys again, stay safe out there. Bye.